All right.
I guess what they are.
How's everybody doing today?
Good, how are you?
Good, good,
Very good, thank you.
good. So I hear Joyce.
Yes,
Who else? Committee members are on the call.
Mike Green was on there at one point.
Yes, I'm here. Was
Okay,
there an
Mr. Green.
agenda? I didn't get a copy of the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see. The email for the agenda went out on Friday the 9th from John.
From
See
who?
that you're-
From Don?
Yeah, John Ando. I see that you're on
Oh,
the
John.
Anything else? And the time that I reviewed it,
on the list here.
they're not included in this.
well, if they got the call-in number, they should have gotten the agenda because it's an attachment.
Not isolate them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Finance Committee Packet 10/2020.
I see it now. I see it now. Thank you.
All for TVs, not just one.
Okay.
So that's how we report it to them.
Looks like Dr. Morris is trying to call in, so we'll wait
Okay.
on him.
Doing them separate and then everybody else we work.
Is Representative Howard, is he on the line?
When I get their number.
Mr. Ratio?
Here.
Okay.
Yeah, double check that list I sent you yesterday. I think new flyers one.
Well, I know I didn't put new flyers here because I was thinking they were the ones we didn't have to worry about the goals.
I think, no, they have a goal.
Okay.
I'm going to give it one or two more minutes as Dr. Morris is trying to call in.
You would just report this, you said we could take the numbers. It still shows 22.
So do we have 22 vendors, and does that include our APC rep?
Right, I can't see.
All right.
Andy, do you have a quorum?
I do. Yeah, we can move on. And, all right. I was about to text Dr. Morris to see if he's still trying, but at any rate, we will move forward. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion to adopt the minutes.
I just received the number.
Okay. Dr. Morris, is that you?
Yes.
Right. So let the record show then Dr. Morris joined us. We just adopted the agenda. Motion to adopt the minutes from the August meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is that a motion? Do I have a second? I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. It's unanimous. Motion to adopt the minutes from the September meeting.
I so moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I heard 3. Dr. Morris, did you vote? Motion passes. Matters referred from the Board of Directors. John, any items there?
We have none.
Okay, good. Thank you. So now we'll move on to monthly financial reports from Ms. Andrews.
Hello, everyone. Give me a second to check it. guys are moving kind of fast today, which I appreciate. My report started on page 19. So again, page 19 gives you your financial highlights. We're reporting on the month of August 2020. For the month of August 2020, we had a net loss of roughly $998,000, and that's including your depreciation. Our total revenue year-to-date is what we report, it's $1.6 million. Again, revenue is money that we bring in. This number represents about 12% of our budget. Total expenses, including depreciation, all the money we paid out is about $2.63 million, or $1 million over, which results in that net loss. Year-to-date, we paid to our new contract operator, RACP Dev, $223,000. Wrapping up, because we finally made a payment, the final payment to, or one of the final payments to TransDev around August. So their year-to-date payment is $69.4 million, $0.5 million. You got below that is a breakout of what we paid for the month, those certain vendors. Dropping down to our cash, our operating cash balance at Wells Fargo is a little over $9 million. Office Bank, one of our reserve accounts, is shy of $6.5 million. The LGIP is combined. We have two accounts there. They're roughly over $17 million. And year-to-date collections of the penny is at $124,107,000. If you flip over to page 20, page 20 again kind of breaks out the numbers that I gave you on the front for revenues, expenses, and the cash. Do you guys have any questions?
Okay, any questions for Roz?
Yes, I have two.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One, on page 20, you talk about, on the revenue, passenger fare revenue contracts, and I see $154,007. Now, is that, was that taken in during the month of January and February?
This is reporting for the month of August.
Yeah, well, are we collecting funds?
Now, passenger fares / revenue contracts, so that's for anybody that, we have agencies that still like to purchase passes for us, for their general public. So when we have agencies that want to purchase, their money go there. And there's also some agencies like Prisma Health or Nephron, their money go into revenue items as well. So revenue
Yeah, that's
contracts.
a good thing. That's a good thing. I'm just wondering where that it come from.
Yes, so that's for any revenue contracts we have or any passenger fares.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. My second question is, I noticed we have a lot of buses with advertisement wrapped on. Now, I don't see anything here where we are collecting funds. Are we collecting funds from companies who are advertising on the buses?
Yes, there we are. That second line on that same page says special. That includes all advertising revenue, any rental or any interest revenue. The bus, they usually pay us quarterly. So yes, we are collecting money for any advertising on the bus.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any
Mr.
other
Chair?
questions?
Now, Mr. Chair, is this an action item?
No, it's just
Okay.
just financial review.
Information? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Roz? If not, Roz, I have one quick one. I want to make sure I understand. In the same page, page 20, the budget column, we show a budget with a deficit. So at the bottom, we're showing that through this point in the year, we should have a $1 million deficit, but don't we pass a balanced budget? How is that showing up on this report?
Say that one more time. So on the same page, the bottom line net loss of $1 million. What was
Yeah.
your question?
Well, the question is, shouldn't that, that 1 million in the budget column be a 0 because we don't budget a deficit.
Well, it technically, yes, but I leave it there just for those who may look and see that, hey, this minus this doesn't equal 0, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess I know that our actual through this point in the year is negative, but the budget itself should be balanced, right? Or is it depreciation that's not?
I have depreciation included in this, but we didn't, where our current budget didn't budget for 0, if that's where you're going. So we still, like when we did the budget, it was, I think, 8,700 to the positive. So this is going by, I'll check into it, just make
Okay.
sure everything's pulling in, right.
Yeah, it looks to me like either that's,
Yeah,
I
I'll
guess.
check into it, but we
Okay.
didn't, I see what you're saying.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, because it show, Mr. Smith, yeah, because it shows like a positive versus a negative. She needs to figure out how to adjust that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like either we're bringing in some revenue
Right.
from the budget, or something's, because the budget we pass every year is balanced. So just,
Right, it should be, like 2/12 or whatever, that 700
right.
net we had for the year. I got you. I'll look into it and see if everything's pulling in correctly.
Mr. Smith, can Ms. Rossum fix that and show us, and fix it and put it in a position where we'll be able to see that she's adjusted that figure for us?
Yeah, are you requesting that for next month, or do you want to see it by
Well,
email?
just as long as we have it for next month, that's fine. I just
Okay.
want to make sure that when everybody, maybe she might need to, if she's going to present this at the board meeting, she probably need to have that fixed prior to then, so you don't have that question.
Right.
I'll
So Ross,
check into it, and if
Okay.
change it, and when it goes in the board packet, it'll be correct.
all right, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Roz about operations through this point in the year, or any of the other reports that she's provided? Okay.
No, Mr. Smith, can I step away for a minute? But I'm pretty much okay, but I need to step away for just a minute, okay?
Okay, very good. We'll move on and just let us know when you're back. So next up is a report from Dr. Prince about DBE performance.
Good morning. I would like to share with you information regarding our minority and disadvantaged business enterprise participation, and this is since July 1st, 2020. I have been compiling information, and based on what I have been able to review, we currently have 22 vendors with a minority or disadvantaged business enterprise goal, and the goals range from 2% up to 100%. As of July through September 2020, I had an opportunity to review the Commons Financial Register, and there were a total of 15 vendors that were paid that had DBE or MBE contract goals, and this comes to approximately $1.1 million. And of this amount, there were 8 DBEs or MBEs that had been paid, and their amount was around $558,000. And of the 8, 5 were paid directly by the Commons. They had a goal of 100%. When I did the calculation of the amount paid to the minority and the disadvantaged business enterprise in comparison to what had been paid all the vendors, the percentage came to about 52%. And this is just based on all the contracts that were awarded with a DBE or MBE goal. And we will continue to monitor the firms on a monthly basis. And we currently have just a few, I think about 3 or 4 firms that have not reported yet. But as we get this information, it'll be updated and included in the next report.
It'll be, go ahead.
I'll just get ready to say that this kind of ends the information, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I was just going to clarify that after the dust sort of settles on these new vendors, you'll begin doing a paper report again, kind of like you did before with Transdev.
Yes, and I put something together this time, but since it was kind of late, I just didn't include it in the report, but I'll make sure that you receive it next month.
Okay, and we now kind of are operating with two different goals, right? So there's a contract goal and then there's an overall agency goal. And if I understand you, you're tracking both of them simultaneously. Is that right?
Yes, I'm tracking both, but I think, John, you
Oh,
want
yeah,
to?
Mr. Chairman, how it's being reported is, what we agreed is that we're gonna report the agency as a whole. So right now, I believe we have 22 vendors that have a DBE or MBE goal. So we'll be reporting all 22 of them simultaneously.
Will it clearly show the primary contract and its DBE performance vis-a-vis?
It'll show all the contracts.
Okay,
Which our operations contract is one of those 22.
gotcha. Okay,
So we're just reporting it as an agency, because ultimately that's how we're supposed to be reporting into FTA anyway.
okay,
But you'll be able to see individually how each of the vendors are performing in relation to the goal that's been established for each contract.
okay. Thank you. Any questions about DBE? All right,
Thank you.
hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Prince. We'll now move on to agenda item number 8, which is discussion and action items. 8A, request for refund. Ms. Andrews?
Hello again. This one is on page 39. It's labeled agenda item 7A. This is dealing with a customer's request for a cash refund. We have a DART rider, Ms. Tia Smith, who called in to let us know that she'll be moving out of state. Long story short, she wants a refund for her unused ride. I expressed to her that all sales are final. We don't typically do cash refunds, but she wanted to appeal that decision since it's such a large value for her. She stated to us that she's on a fixed income and she needs this money back. And we're at this point, we're trying to see what can be done for her. I know some months ago, we established a no cash refund policy, and it's stated on the back of our route map, and I guess where you think people will know or aware that all sales are final, you can do exchange only, but here we have a different circumstance. I honestly have no recommendation or opinion one way or the other, but just trying to get some other outside help as to what we should do for Ms. Smith. So I have my memo here and a letter from Ms. Smith, asking to give her money back. I gave you guys how many unused rides, total value of it, and she's also included snippets of showing that she will be moving out of state, therefore no longer utilizing DART and not disabled for her account.
Thank you. Thank you, Roz. Any thoughts from committee members? Yes, Dr. Morris.
Yeah. I certainly sympathize with the rider who wants a refund, but I think it's clear that we have a policy and we should adhere to it. I don't know whether she has a copy of the policy, but I think we should forward her a copy if we decide to stick with the policy. We don't want to open up a Pandora's box. If we refund her money, then we need to be fair to refund all other riders' money. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the committee?
Mrs.
Yeah,
Smith, I'm back. I apologize. I'm having work done, so they just drove up, so I apologize. Where are we on the agenda?
We are on item 8A, and we just
Okay.
heard from Ms. Andrews about a request for a refund and
Okay.
for somebody who moved out of state but had prepaid for some DART service.
Okay,
And Dr. Morris just expressed his concern about setting a precedent that violates our, well, we have a policy now that we just adopted that there are no refunds, but we also used to explicitly write it on our literature that there were no cash refunds even before we had that policy.
So are we out of compliance?
Well, so the issue is, do we grant this person a refund? The request is for a $72 refund. Person moved out of state, and we're just sort of at this point. I guess we need to give staff some guidance on what to do, whether to grant the refund as an exception or just point to the fact that we've always said all sales are final.
Mrs. Smith, do I still have the floor?
Yes, ma'am.
If that's the policy, then we need to follow through with the policy and don't make any adjustments. I mean, that should be understood, and that I would be in favor of sticking with our current policy. Because
so
we do not want to start something that we will not be able to stop. So I would prefer to leave it as is.
Okay. So do either you or Dr. Morris want to make that in the form of a motion?
I'll make it in the form of a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry. I was just asking a question.
I'm sorry,
Can-
Mr. Green.
Yeah.
Can she sell that ticket to someone else? Is that possible or is that not?
Andy, can I respond?
Yeah, Ms. Andrews, please respond, and then I'll get to Dr. Morris, who I think is probably asking a procedural question, but yeah.
Okay,
Right.
might she use a purchase her passes? So there would be no way, she could transfer them, but it'd be kind of harder than if she had an actual physical pass to sell to someone. So yes, there is an option for her to sell off to someone. It's just be something she would be responsible for doing.
And how old did you think the lady was? I was just curious.
To be honest, I do not know.
Okay.
She just stated that she was on a limited income. She worked at one of the sites that were affected by COVID and shut down, so she's moving to North Carolina with her daughter.
Where does she work?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again?
Oh, I said, where did you say that she worked? Or did you?
I forget the place she worked. She might have listed it, but, like vote rehab, I think is where she works.
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Morris?
as I stated earlier, I think we should send her a copy of the policy, with the letter indicating that, we are adhering to the policy. And I think it's crucially important that we do some communicating with this provider. And another piece, when we make a motion, we have not been getting the motion verbatim. So I would hope that Ms. Andrew will see to it that we get a motion verbatim. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Morris, you have my commitment on that.
Okay, very good. So we've
Would you
actually.
like us to read back, Mr. Chairman, the motion as we discussed in Board Policy 8 before the votes cast?
Well,
No,
I think
it's okay, like it is. Just make sure when it's in writing, it's verbatim.
Understood.
okay, if the committee's, I think the committee has already voted, so I'm comfortable with the motion and the vote. But Dr. Morris has made a recommendation that some communication be made with this person with an explanation of the policy.
Of the policies and procedures, and just send her a copy of it, and that's it.
Good. All right. Item 8B, the issue of subcontracting the detailing and bus stop maintenance, which came up at the last meeting, but we deferred it. So looks like Dr. Prince.
Okay, thank you again, and good morning. Information is on pages 44 through 47 of the financial packet. And basically, we received a request from RATP Deb to enter into subcontracting opportunities with, vendors or DDE firms for some other opportunities. And it's regarding, bus stop maintenance, bus detailing, drug and alcohol testing, and company physicals. So it's a little bit more than what's in the, I guess, subject line. In the last, meeting we had deferred everything because we wanted legal review regarding the vehicle detailing, and we have gotten feedback from our legal counsel. And basically it came to the, vehicle detailing, RATP Deb wanted to enter into an agreement with TCS, and TCS would subcontract the work to Care Pro, which was a certified DDE to handle, bus detailing. And legal came back and informed us that, they did not see any implications with the Department of Revenue or any concerns regarding the duplication of costs. So they thought that there were no concerns, so we could move forward, if we wanted to proceed with allowing TCS to enter into the, agreement with Care Pro. And going back to that, the other item was the bus maintenance. In the beginning, in the proposal, Capital Building Services was listed as the firm to handle, the bus stop maintenance. RATP Deb has executed an agreement with them to handle this task, and the agreement began on July 1st, and it's intended to go through the life of the contract, that's between the company and RATP Deb. And all the thing that we're doing now is that we're just, making some revisions to the language in the agreement. But this particular, agreement is in place. Going back to vehicle detailing, we are recommending that TCS, that RATP Deb, subcontract work with TCS, and then TCS contract bus detailing to Care Pro, a certified DDE. And the last item we have is dealing with, RATP Deb would like to add Ed Rush Consulting Firm to handle their drug and alcohol testing and their, company physicals. Ed Rush is already a certified DD firm, and they have been approved to handle the uniforms, but RATP Deb would also like to give them additional work, in terms of the, drug testing and the company physicals. And these are the items that we are requesting for approval, and we are requesting the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Directors that current staff can proceed in granting authorization for RATP Deb to subcontract with TCS to handle the bus detailing via Care Pro, and Ed Rush Consulting to handle the drug and alcohol testing and company physical. This ends my report.
Thank you, Dr. Prince. Any questions for Dr. Prince? If I may, just to clarify, this is with respect to the first of those two subcontracting arrangements. This is the mechanism that RAPDev preferred, correct?
Right.
And we were seeking legal counsel to ensure that this was not going to result in duplicative expenses or fees.
Right. And once legal had a chance to look at it, they informed that it appears that the arrangement would meet the DOR concerns.
Okay.
So they didn't see any problem where they could not do it.
So any other questions from the committee? Hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, if no one else have any further questions, I make a motion to approve.
Okay, and just to clarify, is that to approve both of the detailing and the bus stop maintenance?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And the, I was gonna say, for the bus stop maintenance, it was really already approved. I was just giving you an update on that particular one. The vehicle will be for the vehicle detailing and the drug and alcohol testing and company physical.
I'm sorry, I was reading off the
Yeah, that's
agenda.
what, okay, well, I didn't hear that, about the, I'm approving the detailing is what I'm trying to approve.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Can someone, Doctor, can you rephrase that for me one more time so I can put in the really form of a motion, so I'll be sure
Okay.
which one we're voting on?
Okay, we're recommending that the board of directors, that the finance committee recommends to the board of directors that the common staff can proceed in authorizing RATP Deb to subcontract with TCS to handle the bus detailing and Ed Rush Consulting to handle drug and alcohol testing and company fiscal.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion. There's a second.
Second. I'll second
Motion and
it.
a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Prince.
you.
Item 8C, security contract. Mr. Ando.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. If we can go to page number 48 of your packet. Since 2015, we've used our prime contractor to provide security services to the Commons facilities. That includes the Commons Central and the Lucius Road facility. Prior to that, the Commons directly contracted for those services. The previous contractor awarded a subcontract relationship to New Age Security, who successfully performed the security guard services at Commons Central and our operations and maintenance facility. In July of 2020, while this procurement was pending, I entered into an interim contract with New Age Security to provide security guard services, and our contract compliance and customer experience managers responsible for their performance. Just so you're aware, we do have a comprehensive security program to ensure the protection of the Commons assets, passengers, employees, and contractors. We expend 1% of our FTA funds to cover our security expenditures as required by FTA, and we also have a human trafficking grant that we're also using to help cover our security costs as well. To give you a perspective of that security program, one, we have a contract for security guards at Commons Central during the operating hours of Commons Central, and we use armed guards, which do not have citation or arresting powers ability. We have a contract with the City of Columbia to provide off-duty police officers to supplement the security guard at Commons Central from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, and another officer that rides Commons buses and patrol Commons bus stops within the City of Columbia from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. We have a contract with the Richland County Sheriff Department to provide off-duty deputies to ride Commons buses and patrol Commons bus stops in unincorporated Richland County from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We have a contract with City of Casey Police to provide off-duty officers to ride routes in Casey, West Columbia, and Springdale 4 days a week for 3 hours. We have a contract with City Center Partnership to provide Yellowstone Ambassador services at Commons Central 7 days a week, which includes security, maintenance, and customer service. The proposed scope of services with New Age would be to provide one guard from 4:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. 7 days a week, except Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day, for a total of 19 hours a day, 365 days a year at Commons Central. To provide a security guard at the operations and maintenance facility from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for a total of 8 hours a day. And then on an as-needed basis, to help us with any security-related work, special projects on an as-needed basis. We received 2 proposals: New Age Security and Strategic Security. New Age is the DBE. Strategic Security, it has a WDBE certification. They're not certified as a DBE in the South Carolina Department of Transportation DBE directory. Therefore, no points were assigned to them. We had a committee evaluate these proposals. That consisted of our contract compliance and customer experience manager, our director of administrations and operations, COO, and the City of Columbia Special Duty Coordinator Police Officer. And they recommended that New Age Security is the most responsive proposer that provides the best value to the comments. And the fiscal impacts to provide these, the fiscal one, I guess this did not work out as well as I thought. I apologize. 1 second. There we go. The fiscal impact for New Age to provide these services for a 1-year period is $1,060,726,085 at an annual rate that increases each year. We're proposing to spend $294,510 for these services, and the New Age Security rate does fall within the amount that has been budgeted for this service. And our recommendation to this committee is to recommend to the board to authorize the executive director to negotiate and upon successful negotiations, execute a contract with New Age Security to provide security guard services for the common facilities for a 5-year period with 5 1-year options. And if negotiations are not successful, to negotiate an award to the second most responsive bidder, Strategic Security. Be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Ando. Any questions for him about this proposal?
Yes, this is Allison. You know, I suppose it's great that we have folks who are, you know, covering us for security, I guess, for in these extended hours. My question is, you know, you mentioned that folks were armed. Is that, I mean, is that something that is necessary, normal? I suppose having armed people everywhere is an American version of normal. But, you know, can you just speak to that a little bit? Do we have the kinds of incidents that make us think that we're going to have somebody shoot somebody?
In the past, Comet Central was a haven for loitering and criminal activity, and there was a lot of police activity at Comet Central. In the past 2 years, we've been aggressive in eliminating that, but from time to time, we do get some aggressive passengers that either want to be disruptive to other passengers or disruptive to bus operators. And while we've not, as long as I've been able to look into the history of our security contracting, have had to pull a gun, there has been times where they've had to use tasers, pepper sprays, and batons to restrain people. And then, of course, with the police being there as well, then the police will come in and handcuff the individual and then cite them and then either release them or take them to the city or the county jail. So the armed kind of gives that extra sense of protection for the public and our employees, but we've not had a need to use it. If we had unarmed guards, I don't know if the public would take those security guards as serious as they would with an armed security guard.
Right, but what I'm hearing also is that it seems like if there is some kind of need to restrain somebody, and you know, if you're trying to be sort of, I guess, nice about this, you know, what I'm hearing is I'm hearing loitering, I'm hearing disruption. You know, every once in a while, maybe someone physically aggressive who may need to have, you know, a different kind of restraint. But I'm always alarmed when we are putting, you know, more guns out there and more visible guns out there. The chances of having the kinds of shootings that we have recently heard so much about, I think just increase greatly. And if there's a way that we can look at what kind of force may be needed and then only really have those kinds of forces out there. I mean, obviously, maybe there would be an instance where someone would need to actually call, you know, law enforcement. But I think just for your average everyday sort of keeping the peace on the bus, do we really need this kind of force?
I understand what you're saying, Ms. Tracio. I think from a comprehensive look at our security, we've come a long way to where a lot of the violent activity that previously was happening at Commerce Central and even on our buses has dropped because of our approach to security on riding buses, patrolling bus stops, and at Commerce Central. I think we can do a comprehensive look on how we can engage more, I guess, for lack of a better word, police-friendly activities, policing-friendly approaches versus having to criminalize, provided that we're still keeping the same mission of trying to keep our employees, assets, and customers safe. And I think that's kind of where the Yellow Shirt Ambassador comes into play, for instance. This contract with New Age does have a price for armed and non-armed guards. So as we look at that comprehensive manner, especially in light of what's going on today, and the fact that we have City of Columbia that's also at Commerce Central, for instance, that has the handcuffs, the baton, the gun, perhaps there could be a more collaborative approach between the two, to where when situations like that occurs, then the police is engaging versus the security guard. Is that something that you're kind of looking more towards?
Yes, I would prefer, if somebody is just, I don't want to criminalize people standing around. I think that maybe we have enough people on this, in this meeting and on this call who understand the history of criminalizing people standing around. I don't want to be in a position where if someone is having a mental health need that they end up being, shot. I just want to be in the kinds of conversations that I get. I mean, I feel like getting to be in the positions where I am right now is a privilege, and I get to lift up some of these issues. And I believe that this is one of the cases where we should be looking at how can we de-escalate and provide more service-based kind of public safety, if you will, rather than more violence-based public safety.
Okay. This contract does allow for that flexibility. So what staff can do is we can collaboratively with our partners in providing security based on the list of services that we've engaged. We can come up with a more policing-friendly strategy now that we've been able to calm down the disruption that previously was occurring. And then
Thank you.
Once we do that, so I would like to engage, of course, the policing agencies via partnerships with City Center Partnership and this proposed contract security firm, so that we have an appropriate strategy in place. So when something does go down, that one of those partners has the appropriate support.
Thank
and
you.
that
That
we're
would be.
not leaving any one of those services left on their own to take matters into their own hands, if that makes sense.
Totally. Thank you.
And Mr. Ando, I think one of my concerns is that the stun guns are not always effective against some people who are who have an altered mental status. And so, I mean, I understand the need for a potential for a gun for some safety for our officers. I mean, if one of our officers died, or just because he was just stunning the person, if he had a gun, he could have survived. That would be a concern of mine.
To clarify, we're looking, and particularly with this question of armed versus non-armed, we're really talking about the security company, not the police officers. I would imagine the police officers, we have no say in that. They're
No, in
going to
our
be armed.
contracts with each of those public agencies, those officers come to us with their full policing or deputy powers.
Right.
So they have to report to work in a vehicle assigned by their respective agency with their respective equipment. So this would more apply to really, with the security company, if we would just engage in the use of armed guards or the use of non-armed guards. So since the contract allows flexibility for both, I think through having that community policing strategy with all parties on the same page, I believe that we could look to, instead of using the armed security guard at Common Central, we can use the non-armed guard coupled with the armed police officer that's already there. But I just want to make sure before we go down that path that we have a collective understanding between each of the parties on how that is going to work, so we don't leave one entity alone without the appropriate protection, since that facility does get significant numbers of passenger activity.
Any other questions for John? So if there are none, I've got one, just that if I understand you correctly, we can move forward with the contract and perhaps after the fact, as part of a study, renegotiate with them this question of armed versus unarmed. Is that?
The contract allows us the flexibility to determine what it is that we want.
Okay.
So as part of the contract negotiation, that's what we'll engage City of Columbia Police, since this really affects Common Central, and have that discussion with them and New Age in the room on how do we have that. And we'll also include City Center Partnership because we have that yellow shirt ambassador. How do we engage the three to work in harmony with each other if it's in the best interest of the Common to have New Age go to Common Central without having a gun? I would presume that they would still have their baton, their taser, and their pepper spray, however, if we went the armed guard route. And then we can, once the negotiations are finalized, we can report back to this committee as well as the service committee on how that policing strategy would be.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, or anyone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would ask Ms. Allison, which since she has a lot of concerns regarding this, could she in some way perhaps, kind of make a motion that would address some of the issues that she raised, please?
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Yes, I was trying to get myself off mute. So I would move that we instruct the executive director to investigate using so without using unarmed, so non-gun carrying security officers for this particular coverage, and that we continue to use law enforcement in the way that they show up. Does that kind of get to the heart of the motion that we need from this?
I'll second that because I think it gives the executive director the authority to work out and negotiate any discrepancies that we may have about this matter. So I will second that motion and let the executive director help us, really tweet it to so that we can get what it is we are looking for. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
So if I understand this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't fully understand the motion. Would you please read it back?
Could you repeat that?
Can you hear me?
Dr. Morris, I think, was requesting that the motion be restated, read back.
Instruct the executive director to investigate using unarmed, non-gun carrying security officers for coverage and using law enforcement the way that they show up.
I just want to make sure that that doesn't tie, does that motion tie our executive director to only use non-gun, non-armed security? Or does that give him the flexibility to do armed and non-armed?
I think, Mr. Green, the way she stated it, I think she probably should have said armed and unarmed, depending on the law enforcement. Is that correct, Mr. Ratio?
Yes, it would be my personal preference to use non-gun wielding security officers. But the motion is really in the spirit of allowing the executive director to have those conversations with the company that will be supplying these security officers to determine what the best path forward would be. But just to indicate that it's not required that everyone who is providing security for us have a firearm.
So I just want to clarify too for my own, so that the way I understand the motion is that you're encouraging the Finance Committee, I guess, to recommend to the board that the board direct John to investigate this question of armed and unarmed and the mix. But it's not really, if I understand it, it's not really giving him the authority to actually execute a contract, which I think is what we're trying to. So I guess my suggestion would be to amend the motion to include explicit permission for the executive director to enter into a contract, especially if it's time sensitive. And that's a question for John. I don't know.
And make sure it's for best practices. I mean, we need to use best practices in this situation.
Agreed. Mr. Ando, do you need some specific instruction that to be authorized to execute the contract?
Yes, Ms. Ratio, that would be ideal. The contract right now is interim, and I wouldn't say it's 100% time sensitive, but the interim period does end on November 30. So I would like the ability to negotiate it and be able to execute. Since the contract already allows for provisions to have armed versus non-armed, it's really a decision of ComEd to determine what guard we're going to put at ComEd Central. So it's not like we have to negotiate with the contractor to do that. I just know that concerns will be brought up by them on how do they get cover when something bad happens and they're left alone. So I want to make sure we're engaging City Center Partnership and City of Columbia Police. So we have a good strategy on how all three will work together if we're going to go with the direction of non-armed guards at ComEd Central. That somebody there, more likely the policing agency, would be the one that has the armed abilities, and everybody else would be non-armed.
Okay.
So we have the ability to make that determination regardless of how the contractor feels.
Okay. Well, how about this for a motion? So I'll amend my motion to say, move to direct or permit the executive director to execute the contract with the instructions to discuss with the contractor using at least some unarmed security personnel. Does that help?
I'll second it for discussion if anyone want to continue discussion on that item. I'll second the amended motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe can I offer a suggestion, for the committee's consideration?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Ando.
Okay, I would suggest this, that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Directors to authorize the Executive Director and CEO to negotiate, and upon successful negotiation, execute a contract with New Age Security to provide security guard services for the Commons facilities for a 5-year period with 5 one-year options, and if negotiations are not successful, to negotiate and award the second most responsive bidder, Strategic Security, and that the Executive Director evaluate the determination of having non-armed security guards at Comet Central, provided that there is a community policing strategy in place in partnership between the proposed security guard company, City of Columbia Police Department, and City Center Partnership, which all provide security services at Comet Central.
That works for me, Mr. Ando. Thank you.
Is that gonna be your motion, Mr. Ratio?
That can be my motion. That's very thorough, and it includes the sentiments that I specifically want to have addressed.
Okay, well, that's what I was second.
All right. So do you accept that, second that?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none. On favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you all. Thank you, John, for that. All right. So now, item number 8D, the landscaping contract award. Mr. Ando.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Similar to security, since 2015, the Comet has used a prime contractor to provide landscaping services to the Comet facilities. Prior to that, the Comet directly contracted for those services. The previous land transit operations and maintenance contractor awarded a subcontract relationship to Juliet Landscaping. However, due to poor performance, they switched that subcontract to Capital Building Services, whom has successfully performed landscaping services. In July of 2020, while the procurement was pending, I entered into an interim contract with Capital Building Services to provide landscaping services, and RAPP Dev, under its contract, is responsible for the oversight of their performance. The scope of work for the landscaping services is to maintain the landscaping at Comet Central and to maintain the landscaping at the operations and maintenance facility, and on an as-needed basis, provide landscaping services to our over 1,500 bus stops throughout the service area. We received 2 proposals. One is from A. James Global Services and another is from Greg Lawn and Landscaping. Both these proposers are not registered as DBE with SCDOT. However, A. James Global Services, as well as a DBE, is not certified in landscaping. Due to this action, no scores was given for DBE. Staff will work to see if they're certified in the Governor's Small and Minority Business Directory, which is allowable under the Comet MBE program. A committee consisting of the Comet contract compliance and customer experience manager, RAPP Dev facility and vehicle maintenance manager, and their facility maintenance worker reviewed the proposal, and based on the score, and recommended that A. James Global Services is the most responsive proposer that provides the best value to the Comet. A. James Global Services is proposing to do the services for a 5-year total for $330,000 and an annual rate that increases each fiscal year. We anticipated spending $50,000 for these services. However, due to their annual rate exceeding the budgeted amount, staff will work to negotiate the scope of work to bring down in line with the budget, or use the savings from the janitorial contract to cover the deficit in landscaping services. In addition, we have to remulch our facilities, and A. James Global Services will perform that function for $7,900 $1,205 annually. There's no additional funding that is required to fund this procurement, and no amendment to the budget would be needed if we were to enter into a contract with A. James Global Services. On an advisory, the part one question that's going to be asked is why didn't Capitol Building Services submit a proposal for landscaping? From talking with their owner, he mentioned that he just simply ran out of time, and while he would like to bid on this work, he just didn't make the deadline. But his main focus was more on the janitorial side. And I will be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Ando. Any questions? I guess just one quick one from me. If we end up accepting the A. James Global and not reducing the scope and going over budget, will we just do a budget amendment mid-year, or?
No, because the line item that janitorial landscaping is in, in the next item, you'll see that the janitorial came in under budget. We would just merely use the savings from the janitorial sub-line item to cover the deficit in the landscaping line item.
So it's, okay, it's all in the same line item is what you're saying?
That's correct. So no,
Okay.
no budget authority is required from the board to enter into this contract.
Gotcha. Any other questions for John? Is there a motion?
So move, Howard.
Okay. And Representative Howard,
So
that's
we
a
just need to move
motion
to
to
approve?
recommend to the board?
Yes.
So I'll move to recommend approval to the board.
Okay. So I think Representative Howard had made that motion. Do you want to second it?
Oh, sorry, yes, I will second it.
All right. Any further discussion?
Who made the motion?
Representative Howard?
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Very good. Thank you. And it sounds like Representative Howard has joined the call. Reflect that.
Sorry.
Item number 8E, janitorial services contract.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we are going to go to page 82 of the packet. Similar to the last two items, the Comet since 2015 uses prime contractor to provide janitorial services to the Comet facilities. Prior to that, the Comet directly contracted for these services. The previous contractor awarded a subcontract relationship to Capitol Building Services who successfully performed janitorial services. In July of 2020, while the procurement was pending, I entered into an interim contract with Capitol Building Services to continue to provide janitorial services, and RATP Dev is also responsible for the oversight of their performance. The ultimate scope of work for this contract is to provide building maintenance and janitorial services at the Comet Lucius Road facility, as well as janitorial services at Comet Central. And the services are provided 7 days a week at the Lucius Road facilities from 6 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday, and then 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturdays, and 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Sundays. There's also a day person on the weekdays that work from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., and there's no janitorial services on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day since we don't operate. At Comet Central, they're to keep one employee there from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week, excluding Christmas Day and Thanksgiving Day. And they should be cleaning Comet Central every 30 minutes so that that facility gets heavily utilized and requires a lot of cleaning. And they're responsible to provide all cleaning supplies and equipment necessary to keep our facilities clean. And then RATP Dev is responsible for ensuring that they're operating under the terms of this contract. We received 7 proposals JanPro, CarePro, Capital Building Services, Corporate Staffing, US&S, DNC Associates, and Trinity Consulting. All of them are DBEs with the exception of JanPro. CarePro is listed in the directory. However, they did not submit documentation as required in the RFP to demonstrate that they meet the DBE. So those two vendors did not receive scoring. Trinity Consulting was disqualified for not providing a proper proposal as required in the RFP. A committee that consisted of the Commons Contract Compliance and Customer Experience Manager, RITP Dev's Facility Vehicle Maintenance Manager, and their facility maintenance worker reviewed the proposals, and based on the scoring, recommended that Capital Building Services is the most responsive proposer that provided the best value to the Commons. Capital Building is proposing to do these services for a 5-year total of $811,812 at an annual rate that increases each fiscal year. We anticipated spending $250,000 for these services. It should be noted that Capital Building came in under budget from that $250,000 for fiscal year 21. Their pricing came in at $156,000. So we will have some significant savings in the janitorial line item budget. And therefore, as I mentioned earlier, we would shift, if we're not able to negotiate the landscaping costs down, we would shift the difference of the $250,000 to the landscaping, and we'll still see a budget surplus on janitorial, unless we had any special projects that need to be done over and beyond the scope, which I don't anticipate happening. With that in mind, I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't see the total amount that Capital Building Services would charge us.
That is on page 86. You'll see their monthly rates, their monthly fee, and their annual fee, and they're the very last box.
Yeah, I see that, but I guess I'm cut off at the bottom here. It's the Capital Building, the last line I have is price. I don't have anything below that.
On page 86?
On page, this is 84. Okay, all right. Sorry, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for John? If not, I've got one quick one. Obviously, this is a procurement that's has both price and other considerations. Capital Building Services not the least expensive bidder, but there are other factors we've taken into consideration. I would imagine one of those is, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I guess my question is, how has their performance been?
Their performance has been very good.
Okay.
Tanisha, would you like to add any comments to that?
Yes, Capital Building Services for the last probably 5 years, they come out, they do janitorial. They also operate at Common Central, where they make sure places disinfected. They also go outside and check the ground, pick up any cigarette butts. So they're very good here for janitorial services, and they keep the place clean, sanitized, and healthy.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept the motion made, recommended by the staff.
I second it, Dr. Morris.
Okay. So that's
Ms.
the motion
Dickinson.
as written on page 84. Dr.
Yes.
Morris? Okay. All right. So any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. All right, so item 8F. And so this is a discussion, just kind of a general discussion about vehicle technologies, I think, Mr. Ando, and kind of it's part of a larger question that I think the board probably is and needs to consider with respect to different options for types of vehicles we procure in the coming years. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ando.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Page 87 is where I'm at. Let me give some high-level points, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. So basically, first and foremost, the board of directors back in 2010, when determining the appropriate vision for the Comet, made a commitment to consider compressed natural gas buses as defined below. Implementation of compressed natural gas to include on-site vehicle fueling stations, reduce fuel costs, and improve air quality and support the American industry. However, as most of you are aware, this vision was also incorporated into the 2012 election for the Richland County Transportation Penny. And there's a commitment that the Comet has made to the voters that we're going to deliver the items that are in Vision 2020. Presently, we do not have CNG. However, the board of directors at the last board meeting approved implementing CNG for only 12 buses only. We do have a fleet presently of 90 buses. And within the 90 buses, we have propane, biodiesel B5. Previously, they were pure diesel buses, but last year we converted to biodiesel B5 through the state procurement. We have one hydrogen bus, and we have gasoline vehicles. Now we're adding CNG to the mix, which will be the fuel that we would use for those 12 buses only for a 14-year period. In addition, we have non-revenue vehicles. These are vehicles that administrative and operations staff utilize, and that includes gasoline hybrid that we just recently purchased, and then everything else is gasoline. After these buses are purchased, we won't have to replace any buses until 2024, and then from there, we're going to have a continuous cycle of replacing buses. Your last biggest bus procurement was made in 2016, based on a contract that the Comet has with New Flyer. And when that decision was made, the board elected to just stay on the diesel path, which is why we ended up buying 31 diesel buses. So starting in fiscal year 2024, we're going to have to replace 11 propane cutaway buses. In 2026, we're going to have to replace 4 propane cutaway buses from the Comet side and 21 propane buses from the Dart side. I should also add in 2024, the 2 streetcars that we purchased from Lansing, Michigan, those will also come up for renewal, and they use biodiesel. And then the hydrogen bus that we obtained from the city of North Augusta, that bus would also be eligible in 2024 for replacement. Then in 2027, we will have 4 Comet cutaway buses that propane fuel that will need replacement. Then in 2025, we will have 2 gasoline-powered minivans that would require replacement. Then our next significant bus replacements won't be until 2031, where you would need to replace 31 of the buses that was just purchased in 2017, and those are fueled by biodiesel. And then the last significant bus replacement would be the 12 university buses that was purchased this year. Now that we need to start preparing for a Vision 2030, this board will need to determine what is the best fuel option for the replacement fleet starting in fiscal year 2024. There is an emerging desire in the public transit industry to start going zero emissions. And the two fuel technologies of choice that are zero emissions is battery electric and hydrogen. And they're our current front runners for advancing in the public transit arena. This year, the board, some of you may recall, in 2019, the board authorized staff to purchase a hydrogen bus from the city of North Augusta, which we're working with our contractor to put into service. And that will be our second demonstration of operating hydrogen buses in the Columbia urbanized area. The Comet had an opportunity to operate a hydrogen bus back in 2011, and that bus ran for about 8 months before it was transferred to another transit agency. That was like the first prototype of hydrogen, and it was a very challenging demonstration from the reports that I've read in relation to that. This bus that we purchased from the city of North Augusta previously ran as a baseball shuttle in their city, and it's a fully functioning bus. AC Transit in Oakland, California has a large fleet of this style of hydrogen bus, and they've had great successes. And we've actually entered into a contract with AC Transit to train our staff and our contractor staff on how to operate and maintain this hydrogen bus that we have on property. We also have an opportunity to experiment with battery electric buses. That will be the next item for this committee to consider. 5 battery electric buses are available for transfer from the Nashville Metropolitan Transit Authority to us. In order for us to successfully operate zero emissions, infrastructure is critical. We would have to build hydrogen stations if we want to go the hydrogen path, or we'll have to build charging stations if we want to go the battery electric path. If we want to go the path of both, we need to have both type of abilities to, both type of infrastructure to use both type of systems. Just as a reminder, we've experimented with hydrogen and electric multiple times. 2011 was our first experiment with hydrogen, and then in 2019 we borrowed a hydrogen bus for a week, and then we borrowed an electric bus for 60 days to just kind of give us an idea on how these technology works. So the board is aware, the board of directors authorized 2 active bus contracts. New Flyer, which only allows for diesel and CNG based on previous board action in 2015, and then Hometown Trolley, which allows for diesel, CNG, and battery electric. Those contracts expire in 2021 and 2025 respectively. We presently have 2 active fuel contracts and 1 pending fuel contract. Biodiesel through the state procurement, which expires actually in fiscal year 2022. True Gas CNG, which will expire in 2030. And then AmeriGas, which will expire in 2025. We purchase our gasoline fuel using WEX Express cards, and that's an ongoing contract until it's either terminated by the Commons. I would believe that our upcoming vision can lay the foundation for transitioning to a zero-emission fuel type to eliminate the dependency on fossil fuels, which would also guide our future fuel and vehicle replacement contracts. As you're aware, buses that emit fossil fuels emit air pollutants that's harmful to our environment and combine to producing smog and greenhouse gases, whereas zero-emission buses generally are more environmental friendly. So just so you have an idea on all the various fuel types, in the staff report, I gave you a summary of the various fuel types you can use for public transit. Biodiesel, we presently use for a lion's share of our fleet is B5, which is 5% biodiesel and 95% petroleum diesel. There's no significant improvements as it relates to nitrous oxide, which is known as NOx, or engine performance or engine wear and tear between B5 and ultra low sulfur diesel. However, the use of B5 does result in a slightly lower fuel economy compared to pure petroleum diesel. You also have B20 and B100. B20 and B100, as we understand, would not work on our type of engines that we have in our buses and would create significant maintenance challenges, which is why we opted for the B5 alternative. Compressed natural gas is starting to become, as of today the most common form of alternative fuel used in the public transit industry. CNG has significantly less nitrogen oxides, but a little bit more on the greenhouse gas effect. As mentioned, lower CO2 emissions, but it's offset by higher hydrocarbon emissions. CNG also requires a different type of infrastructure than diesel and requires a different type of training to maintain. While CNG is the preferred choice of fuel in public transit across the country, it is not the emerging fuel choice for the future. And as battery electric and hydrogen start to evolve, many transit agencies are starting to create new fuel strategies that will downscale the use of CNG and move more towards electric and or hydrogen. Methanol previously was used in public transit, no longer being used in public transit just because of the problem it had with engine and fuel economy. Liquefied natural gas, known as LNG, was also used in the public transit industry in the late 90s, early 2000s. However, it's no longer being used just because of the ability to keep the fuel in an extremely cold temperature and the cost associated with operating LNG. Liquefied petroleum gas, which is known as propane, is somewhat common in the public transit industry. It's not successful in large bus applications. It's more used in small bus applications. However, the range that you can get from a propane bus is fairly limited. But it does, it is significant. It is more environmentally friendly than using biodiesel or traditional diesel. Hybrid electric was very popular in the early 2000s, in the early and mid 2000s, and hybrid electric would work appropriately with diesel applications or with CNG applications. However, this technology has been on a decline with the emergence of battery electric and hydrogen, which, as I mentioned, gives you zero emissions. Generally, hybrid electric buses also cost more to operate, and over the course of time, you have to replace the battery systems in those buses, which adds a significant cost to the bus refurbishment costs. So now we get into the emerging technologies of hydrogen and battery electric. Hydrogen is basically utilizes a fuel cell technology, and it's basically combining hydrogen and oxygen to produce electricity, heat, and water. Wherein the fuel cells are similar to batteries, and they convert the energy produced by a chemical reaction into usable electric power. This is a pure zero emission bus. It doesn't emit any gases. It basically just emits water when it's operating. So it definitely meets the environmental impacts as it relates to having a better climate in our country. And of course, breathing the water is non-toxic, of course. Battery electric is fairly new. A lot of transit agencies have been going this direction. However, range could be somewhat limited when you use battery electric. There's two ways that you can use battery electric. You can use it through overhead chargers or through power lines that's connected to the power substations, or you can just have batteries on the buses and then fast chargers, and then you would just charge the buses every 5 to 8 hours. The cost to transition to zero emission at this present time is costly. A battery electric bus can cost $750,000 plus an additional $100,000 to add options, where the hydrogen bus presently is costing about $900,000 to $1 million. As more transit agencies convert to this zero emission technology, the price will come down. I can tell you when I purchased my first CNG bus in 2000, the cost of CNG was significantly more than the cost of diesel buses. Today, CNG is almost equal to the cost of the diesel buses. And that's just because transit agencies have purchased a lot of CNG buses equivalent to the number of diesel buses that I've purchased. So I anticipate with regulatory action being taken by many states across the union, that the cost of these buses will go down because there's going to be this requirement to buy these buses. And many transit agencies, and even in some cases states, are taking executive action or board of director action to make a commitment to transition to zero emissions by 2035. In the case of battery electric, one thing to be mindful of is that it's still not true zero emissions because the batteries and the electricity still has to come from a power plant. And the power plant that's obtaining the electricity from the traditional grid is more likely going to be either nuclear or it's going to be coal in the case of South Carolina. Some cases you'll have some renewable power sources such as wind energy or landfill gas energy or wood waste or solar energy. At the present time, South Carolina does not have a geothermal plant. So if you really want to achieve true zero emissions while utilizing battery electric, the best approach to charge your buses is to install solar panels, which would give you that true zero emissions ability, and then you're not utilizing traditional electricity from the grid. There are price considerations in the operation of alternative fuel buses. Page 91 at the bottom gives you a table of how that looks. In addition, as a regional transportation authority, we are exempt from state fuel taxes, and we can receive a 50-cent credit per gallon on the use of alternative fuels from the IRS. And we just need to file that form every quarter. Page 92 gives you a summary of how that credit works. When utilizing hydrogen, of course, you still have to procure the hydrogen fuel from a vendor, and hydrogen fuel is generally going around the cost of $2 per gasoline gallon equivalent, which is similar to the cost of CNG. So there's not a significant cost difference between using CNG or hydrogen. However, you're going to have significant costs as it relates to building the infrastructure to house that hydrogen technology. Battery electric, you don't pay a cost per gallon, but you do pay charge per kilowatt to charge your buses when you're purchasing the electricity from the local energy companies, such as like a Dominion Electric, when you're using off the traditional grid. And then when you're using solar power, depending on how much solar power you generate, based on a number of solar panels you have installed and the availability of sunshine, you can almost have a zero-cost electricity cost. However, if there's times where you're not generating enough solar power and you have to depend on a traditional grid, then you'll have to rely on Dominion Energy and you'll pay on a per kilowatt hour. So as you transition your fleet from either a fossil fuel dependent fleet to a zero emissions fleet, your fossil fuel costs will go down, but you'll still have another cost as it relates to the energy side if you're going to go electric, or the hydrogen side if you're going to purchase the hydrogen from the hydrogen dealer. In summary, I've also given you a comprehensive report on page 93, which is for policymakers such as yourself, called Which Alternative Fuel Technology is Best for Transit Buses? It kind of gives you the pros and cons for all the various fuel types that you can use in a public transit arena. My honest recommendation to this committee and also to the board is that you use the Vision 2030 process to develop a strategy to go towards a zero emissions fleet, and perhaps ultimately the board would make a commitment that whether it's 2035 or 2040, that this agency would work towards a strategy on all future bus replacements starting in fiscal year 2024 to convert towards one of those zero emissions technologies, whether it's we elect to go all hydrogen, all battery electric, or a combination of the two, would be a process that I would hope that this board would engage in discussing to provide better environmental opportunities for our country. Be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Morris?
I have some concerns, not only with PNG, but I have some concerns with the 12 buses we recently purchased. 10 years from now, many of us wouldn't be on the board, and we don't know what natural gas is going to cost. I sort of disagree with Mr. Andrew about fossil fuel prices will go down. I think they will go up because the demand will not be as great, and it will be hard to get natural gas. Natural gas also contributes gases to the atmosphere that will be harmful. And I think we as a board need to take another look at purchasing CNG buses as opposed to electric buses. I thank Mr. Andrew for his extensive research. And if you look on page 94, one study found that among the choices available to transit agencies, battery electric buses are the best option due to low life cycle agent costs and environmental and health impacts from greenhouse and air pollutant emissions. Now, that being from one of the studies, I think we should really take that under consideration. If you look on page 118 of what Mr. Andrew gave us, it also, another finding, the lower cost alternative fuel bus option is a battery electric bus when compared to conventional diesel. And I just think that we need to maybe take this back to the board and get some more input from a larger number of board members about natural gas buses compared to purchasing electric buses. I understand that electric buses are much more expensive, but in the long run, I think it would be to our advantage because we need to really look at climate changing, and we need to look at the poisonous gas that we are putting in the atmosphere. And those are my concerns.
Thank you, Dr. Morris.
Mr. Chair?
I think I heard Mr. Green first and then Ms. Dickerson.
Yeah, just two questions here. One for Dr. Morris. Dr. Morris, I'm sorry, I missed what you said was I thought you said something in your opinion or some study that you read of what was the best bus system. I didn't capture what that was or the best fuel system. Can you repeat that for me?
Well, I was commending Mr. Andrew for his research, and I highlighted some of the research which I indicated on page 894. If you see there in the center, in the green highlighted area, it says this study found that among the choices available to transit agencies, battery electric buses are the best option due to low life cycle agency costs and environmental and health impacts from greenhouse and air pollution emissions. So that I took under serious consideration, and I also took a look at another finding on page 118 that Mr. Andrew gave us. Lowest cost alternative fuel bus option is the battery electric bus when compared to conventional diesel. And my concern is that we need to take another look at gas buses, natural gas buses, as opposed to electric buses. And I think the future is going to be with electric buses, and the gas buses, I think, will be fading out.
Okay, so just so I completely understand you, you're saying you're favoring the electric buses, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
this
my
question is
final
for Mr.
point was, I think that all of us, all board members, not only this committee, but the entire board, need to take another look at electric buses compared to natural gas buses.
Yes, sir. And this question was for Mr. Endo. I seem to remember, I thought that the city of Columbia did a hydrogen station, and I think they still have the hydrogen station, if I remember correctly. Is there any chance that if we would go that route, we could team up with the city of Columbia, kind of in that aspect, to maybe we could build up their station there that they currently have? And I'm not advocating for hydrogen. I'm just saying if we go that direction. Okay. So just a thought.
So we, as part of this hydrogen bus that we have today, we talked and worked with the city on the use of that station, because we originally used that station in fiscal year 2011. The station is significantly obsolete and would require a significant replacement, and the city is not interested in going down that path at this point. So for the time being, we're building a small interim hydrogen station on our property for that one bus that we have. And the facility would be scalable to where if this board was to consider hydrogen as an alternative, then we would already have the infrastructure in place to do so.
I got it. Thank you.
The cost to replace the city station is far not worth even considering based on the estimates we received.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I mean, it was just an idea. But thank you for addressing that. Appreciate it.
Ms. Dickerson?
Mr. Smith and Mr. Andor, this is a very complicated matter. I can understand discussing it here, but this is just too long. This is a workshop, in my opinion, presentation. I think it should be in a different format for us to comprehend. There's a lot to comprehend to make a decision. So I would think that you should probably figure out a way to give it in a more of a workshop presentation, because this is very long, it's very futuristic, and it's very complicated. And I don't know whether you want to spend a half a day in a board meeting discussing this matter with 11 people. So I think it needs to be narrowed down so that we can have a better way to comprehend it better, so we can make a better and a more informed decision. This is just a lot to try to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. I agree. I think this should be a big picture conversation at the board level. I think we've got two issues. One is the recommendation that we just made last month to the board, and the board's action regarding the 10 or 14 vehicles, the CNG vehicles. That's one issue. I mean, we've already taken action on that. I don't know what the status of the procurement is now, but the other issue, and I think this is the more important one, is the long-range view that you're talking about, Ms. Dickerson, that we really do need to be thinking about what types of technologies are the future for reducing environmental impacts, making sure that we're fiscally responsible, all those things. And so there are two issues, I think, that are kind of relevant to this question. And I don't know exactly, what, if any, action we need to take out of this committee meeting, but that's kind of the way I see this. The question as it's before us right now is it. So John, can you say something about, the action we took at the last board meeting and where that stands? Procurement?
Yes. So the action that was taken at the last board meeting is to issue a purchase order to New Flyer to have CNG buses and to enter into a contract, negotiate and enter into a contract with True Star CNG to build a station to support those 12 buses only. So for the 12 buses we just purchased, they would only be for, the CNG station would only be for those buses only. We would not buy CNG going forward into the future. So that's for that first action. To your second point, I would agree that a workshop format would be appropriate to have this global discussion. Ultimately, the board will have to come up with a new fuel direction for our upcoming bus replacements in fiscal year 2024. Between now and then, we'll have no bus replacements that we need to address. By 2024, you're going to start to have a lot of the fleet reach their useful age, and at that point, as I mentioned in my staff report, zero emissions is going to be the way to go, and I would think that this board would consider a combination of electric and hydrogen, or one or the other, and no longer want to pursue gasoline, diesel, or CNG as the fuel of choice. But I think, and I agree with Ms. Dickerson and yourself, Mr. Chairman, that this needs to be discussed in a workshop session so we can discuss all of the pros and cons with those two fuel types, and then perhaps develop a strategy on how we're going to start converting the fleet to zero emissions.
All right. Any other questions from the committee or?
If I can also just, if I may add a response to Dr. Morris's comments, that's okay?
Sure.
And Dr. Morris, I agree with your analysis that you mentioned. I just wanted to mention, though, that CNG, the price of CNG is actually less than the price of diesel, and we get the alternative tax credit by utilizing the CNG. So while I'm not advocating for CNG as the fuel of the future, it is still a relevant fuel type that from an environmental benefit actually performs better environmentally than our biodiesel buses that we're presently running today. So for the situation that we're in today, and based on cost consideration and the availability of the contract that we have, we only have a choice between diesel or CNG. And if we're going to talk about the environmental benefits between those two choices that we have based on what's in place, CNG would be the more environmentally friendlier option to go versus the diesel path. The comment is also on a heavy duty pipeline for Dominion Energy. So tapping into the natural gas is very easy, and for the lifespan of the buses for the 14 years will be readily available. I suspect that the cost of CNG will continue to be significantly under the cost of diesel for the span of the 14 years, as it has been for the last 25 years that it's been in place.
If I could just respond quickly to some of that. I do respect what you're saying, understand. However, we know that we don't have to buy or pay for the natural gas for the next 10 years.
Correct.
You know that a company is providing that. But I am concerned, looking at long range, what would happen on the 11th year? We would pick up that cost, and many of us won't be around on the board at that point. It's going to be much more expensive. And then let's look at our health, climate warming, what natural gas is doing to us. So that is my final comment on this.
Understood. Thank you, sir. No, I respect that.
So do we need any action out of this, or can we just,
I think the appropriate action would be to recommend that the board hold a workshop to discuss fuel strategies as part of the Vision 2030 that needs to be prepared.
okay, anybody like to make that motion?
I'll
I
make
will-
the motion.
And I will
Okay.
second that.
Very good. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yeah,
Yep, Dr. Morris.
I certainly would go along with that, but we tend to, when we say have a workshop, tend to drag it out. And I would hope that this will not be like some of the others, go on and on and on. We need to, and I guess it would be up to the board, but we need to move ahead with a discussion on this as soon as possible.
Dr. Morris, I truly agree, but I do know that if we've had this long discussion in this particular finance committee, I can only imagine how it be when we get 12. So if we can come together and look at all of these alternatives and then narrow them down, then we can actually have a better vote on them. That would be my that's my thought on this. That is why I said we should have some kind of work session, not to bring everything else, but just to focus on this particular item.
Okay,
Council Lady, I certainly agree with you, but, you know, my only concern is that we don't drag this out. We need to discuss it sooner than later.
I totally agree. Thank you.
okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
Mr. Smith, I hope you direct Mr. Ask Mr. Andor to look at some dates and stuff so that we can address this as soon as possible, so we can get this information as soon as possible.
You're good. We'll do that. Thank you. Mr. Ando, you heard that, right?
I did, Mr. Chairman,
Okay, thank you.
and I'll work with the board chairman on this as well.
All right, so last item under 8G, which I think is a related topic, but a specific matter. Mr.
Yeah,
Ando.
so this is kind of think of it as a low-cost, free opportunity if we want to try battery electric buses here at the Commons. I'm requesting this finance committee can provide consideration to receive up to 5 electric buses from the Nashville Metropolitan Transit Authority. They're known as WeGo Transit. They recently discontinued a service called the Music City Circuit. And they have Proterra Catalyst 35-foot buses with an overhead charger ready for the Common to use through an FTA transfer. It should be noted that these are short-range buses and they can operate up to 10 miles without a charge. There would be a charging station that would recharge the bus for a 10-minute period so the bus can do another 10 miles. So these type of buses work well on a downtown circulator or short neighborhood type routes, like what they did in Nashville. If we were to get these buses, some considerations I'll just need to be taken into consideration. We'll just need to train the bus operators and mechanics on how to operate and maintain the bus. We would need to install a charging station at the operations and maintenance facility. We would need approval by SCDOT to install the overhead charger on its right-of-way. We would need approval by the City of Columbia to install the overhead charger through the normal permit process. And we'll just need to establish an account with Dominion Energy regarding the use of electric buses, since the power would be generated beyond what the Common is generally spending under its current rate schedule, and an additional meter would be required for the overhead charger. We have previously done these FTA transfers. The 5 buses we got from the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada is an example, as well as the 2 trolleys that we got from the Capital Area Transportation Authority is another example. And if we were to go this direction, we would just have to replicate the process we did in May of 2019 to obtain those buses. And upon the approval of this board of directors and the approval of the WeGo Transit Board of Directors, then those buses would be transferred to us. We've identified some routes that these buses could potentially operate on without any significant operational challenges. That would be our Soda Cap connector routes, Route 6, 12, 74, and our Orbit route, which primarily operates in the downtown Columbia core. These buses, if we obtain these buses, we would have to dispose of 5 of our cutaway buses, which are coming up for the need to be disposed of anyway. FTA guidelines gives them a 7-year lifespan, and they've definitely reached that 7-year lifespan. If we were to make the transfer, WeGo Transit would discuss with their board of directors if they would just merely do an FTA transfer, or if they would just do an FTA transfer but us pay the depreciated local cost. So that's still up for determination. In the case of the RTC, they just gave us the buses. In the case of the CATA, we had to pay the depreciated local cost of the trolley. The depreciated local cost would be about $269,000 if we were to go down that path. And we would have to use our local funds for that because the FTA interest would be transferred to us. So at this time, wanted to have the discussion and then see if there's an interest on recommending this to the board, that it's just a consideration interest. And once we have further direction from WeGo Transit, I can come back to the board, to this committee, asking authorization to do the FTA transfer. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I missed this part, but are these new buses?
No, they're 2014 buses that have very low miles on them.
Oh, okay. Now, the federal government usually pay 80% of the cost of a bus. Now, are there any fees involved in these?
No, what will happen is that 80% depreciated from 2014 would be transferred to the ComEd, and there is a potential that we would have to pay the 10% local match back to WeGo Transit, depreciated from 2014.
Okay, thank you.
So my request is just that the Finance Committee authorize us to consider this, and then I would come back with a formal request once I have more details from WeGo Transit. It's almost like a letter of intent a letter of interest that we would like to have these buses.
So you're requesting that the Finance Committee give you that authority directly, or do we need to send it to the board
recommend
first?
to the board of directors that we provide a letter of interest to WeGo Transit for these 5 battery electric buses.
Okay.
And that I would return back to the board, to the Finance Committee and the board, authorizing their transfer once the final details are known.
This meeting is
All right.
being recorded and or transcribed.
I certainly would make that motion, Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate.
I think so, yep. So motion from Dr. Morris to recommend to the board that Mr. Ando issue a letter I'm sorry, yeah, I forget how you said that.
Letter of interest
Of intent,
to
yeah.
WeGo Transit, expressing interest in their 5 battery electric buses, and that I would return to the Finance Committee and Board of Directors with the final terms of transfer for consideration and approval.
Okay. Dr. Morris, is that your motion?
That's fine. Yeah, that's the motion.
Okay, we have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, very good. That motion passes. All right, any other matters to come before the committee? Nothing agendized.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Very good. Thank you.
Second.
Motion second. Thank you. Everybody have a good afternoon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.